So this is what we're going to be building today. Some drawers. You'll need a couple of tools, your miter saw, your table saw, a few drills, a pocket hole, a square, tape measure. So these are the cut lists here, and you're going to be cutting it out of 1x4 stock, and then for most of them cutting them in half, except for the rails. This is all the wood you need, just a couple of 1x4s. The most important step is calibrating your equipment, making sure that everything is cutting on square. Take the time to do this right because it makes everything easier down the road. I usually cheat, and after I cut one, I'll use the first one as a model. This isn't fine woodworking, just rough enough. One board got me through all of those cuts. This is what everything looks like cut out, and that long piece at the end is extra. With one of the scraps, I use this to calibrate my table saw, and I kind of do a small nick, and then I just use the um, carpenter square to make sure that my blade is hitting right in the middle of the piece of wood before I start ripping all of those pieces that I've cut. After that's done, you can begin with the ripping. Take your time and do this right because just like truing up your other equipment, this is going to make all the difference down the road. Here's an action shot of me ripping a piece of 1x4. Pretty amazing. So this blade is pretty old. It doesn't cut quite as easily as it used to, but you see that piece at the front has a nick on it, and we'll address that a little bit later. So this is everything cut and ripped, and now this is what it looks like with the rails. And I cut more rails than I need. Some of those pieces are unsuitable for their purpose, so it's good to have extras. Now on two of the uprights, you're going to need to trim 3/4 of an inch off, and that marred piece is a good candidate because you can cut that piece off. Also, the front piece needs to be cut a little bit, trimmed a little bit so that it doesn't overlap the one below it. After you've cut everything to length and ripped it to the appropriate width, it's time to start doing the pocket holes, and I recommend using two hands to do this. It's much easier, but if one happens to be holding a camera, you can get by. So calibrate everything. You can see the collar is set to 3/4 inch stock, uh, and we're ready to rock and roll. Pocket holes are very easy and super strong. I have two drills just to make it easier so I didn't have to constantly switch bits, but you can do it with one. This is an old school corded drill. After the pocket holes are drilled, it's time to attach everything. So I drilled the pocket holes in the uprights for the front, and I drilled the pocket holes on the top and bottom pieces for the uprights that go uh, to form the drawers. So now I'll just do a couple of close-ups here so that you can see this is not the best joinery here, but it's adequate for what we're doing. So um, you can see the importance of truing up your devices. So see here you can see the small pieces that will form the top and bottom of the inserts. That's where the pocket holes are. And this is what they look like, just kind of roughed in and resting on the front. This is why you cut 3/4 inch off of the uprights, two of them, is so that you made front place for the front plate, and then here's the center one. Now this reminded me that I didn't drill a pocket hole to attach that, so I'm going to mark off the center and then drill a pocket hole on the top and bottom rail for that centerpiece. Now make sure you do it with the pocket holes on the same side as the other pocket holes, otherwise it'll look funny. And if you do it right, this is how it'll look. Now I'm going to attach the rails. To attach the rails, I start by offsetting the top by 5/8 of an inch, and then measuring down. So there's 5/8 of an inch, and then moving the yardstick down, and then marking every 5 inches. The drawers that we're using are 5 inches is plenty of clearance, and there will be 4 sets of rails. So after you've marked it on one side, you can use the carpenter square and mark the other side so that all of your rails end up square, or you can measure on the other side. If your tools aren't completely square, then you may end up with rails that are crooked, but it will at least line up to your framing. In the middle piece, you need to do it on both sides, and then on the two end pieces, you need to do it just on one side. Make sure you pick which side you want to be facing in. So now on the end pieces, it's important that the overhang goes on the short side because that's going to stick out all the way to the front of the framing. And I do it in 3 steps, one with a pilot hole, then countersink, and then with the screws. And this is what it looks like when it's complete. I'm just using 1-inch screws here. I think they're drywall screws too, they're not even wood screws. So that's one down. And again, make sure the overhang is there because that's how it's going to fit into the front faceplate, as you can see here. Now on the center rail, here you can see I've done the pilot hole, and I'll show you another photo here with the countersink. You can tell this is not an exact science. And then with the holes drilled, or the screws drilled in. Now on the centerpiece, same process, but you're going to do it on 2 sides. You don't want the screws to run into each other. So on one side, I've put them on the outside, and when I flip it over, I'll do the screws on the inside of the rail. This is what that looks like when it's completed. Now you need to attach these pieces to the frame. I just pilot hole with countersink and 1 5/8 inch screw. I attached both sides. You don't have to worry about it being square just yet. And then attach the middle piece using the pocket hole that we drilled earlier. So now that that's done, I'm going to attach the back pieces, which you can see I've got a little bit of an overhang on the bottom and it's flush on the top. So this does 2 things. One, it keeps the frame rigid and square, and then it also provides a little bit of a rest for the back. And this is important because, as you'll see in a second, the grading that it's on is slightly lower than the lip of the shelving unit. So this just helps to keep it level. And this is what it looks like when it's complete. Now I'm using drawers that are, or bins that are 5 inches tall with a lid. So without the lid, they fit perfectly in this space, and they're about 8 3/4 of an inch wide.